Hey fools, welcome to Industry Focused, a podcast that dives into a different sector of the stock market every day. It is Tuesday, May 31st, so consumer and retail is on tap. I am your host, Vincent Shen, and I hope all of our listeners were able to enjoy their long weekends. I'm joined today by Fool.com contributor Daniel Klein, who's calling in remotely from Connecticut. Dan, very, very happy to have you on the show. How was your Memorial Day?
Oh, not so bad. Happy to be back.
Awesome. So jumping right into it, and our main topic of the day, back in early April, Sean and I had discussed some of the high-level drama at Walt Disney when Thomas Staggs, who was then the chief operating officer of the company and who appeared to be the natural choice to replace CEO Bob Iger after his retirement, he ended up actually resigning rather abruptly, and he threw the established succession plan into question. So there were some reports that touched on the behind-the-scenes conversations that may have been happening among the management team and board of directors at Disney that may have led to Staggs' departure after, working at the company for about a quarter century. So this kind of corporate drama is really, surprisingly, not that uncommon among even some of the world's largest publicly traded companies. And today, Dan and I will be looking at the scene that's currently unfolding at Viacom. So just to give our listeners some high-level perspective of the story here, the setting is Viacom, which has suffered about a 45% decline in its share price over the past 2 years. The company operates via two primary segments, its media networks. So think about channels like Nickelodeon, Comedy Central, MTV, Spike, and then also its film entertainment business with Paramount Studios. And, they have some pretty well-known franchises like Mission Impossible and Transformers. So both of these businesses are facing headwinds. Think on one hand, cord cutting among its television networks, and then on another hand, its lack of steady movie franchises for its film business. And then now to the actors that we have involved. So first, there's the founder of the company, Sumner Redstone. So the media mogul he acquired Viacom back in '87, and
he bought the company when it was still part of CBS, and then eventually they were split into two. So to dial it back, Sumner Redstone controls about 80% of the voting shares in Viacom through a trust, and that's where the intrigue is starting to happen.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. I realized not quite so much the founder, but the person who's brought Viacom and kind of curated it to the business that it is today.
He's been the unquestioned kingpin of Viacom and CBS, no matter what his title has been. And he's been CEO, he's been chairman, he's been super duper chairman, sort of, whatever title. I just made that last one up, but whatever title you need, he's had. And now the question is he still the one calling the shots? He's had some major health issues, and recently there was a court case where his longtime caretaker and partner sued and basically said, hey, I should be making his decisions. That's what he wants. He's not capable. And he was actually seen by a geriatric psychologist, I may not be getting that title exactly right, who determined that while he clearly had some dementia, he was capable of deciding who would take care of him. Now, what wasn't ruled upon, and that's very important here, is it was not decided if he was actually competent to be making business decisions. That's sort of something that the Viacom board would like to force, but it has not happened yet.
Yes. And beyond Sumner Redstone, I think the really important people who are kind of involved in this drama right now are his daughter, Shari Redstone, and then CEO and executive chairman, which is a title that he got somewhat recently, earlier this year, Philippe Dauman, and then the rest of the board of directors at Viacom.
Well, the challenge here is, so Shari Redstone will eventually own all of her father's stock or have control of it through a trust. And what has been happening is Dauman and another trustee have been kicked off the trust, and they're suing to prevent that. The reason this is important is whoever controls that trust eventually controls Viacom and CBS. And you can look at this one of two ways. The Viacom board is alleging that Shari Redstone is orchestrating all of this, that she wants to replace these people so she can have control. Shari Redstone is saying, no, this is what my father wants. He's not happy with the performance at Viacom, which could ultimately lead to a major change in the board there, and even Dauman losing his job. that's something that the independent directors on the board have been fighting. So there's a lot of sort of palace intrigue here. And the big question is, and we talked about this a little while ago, is it good business sense? Is it that Viacom's not doing well? So, hey, let's make some changes. And that's what both Sherry and Sumner wants. Or is this Sherry Redstone saying, hey, I'm going to use this as a way to consolidate my power base, kick this guy out, and then, I'll be the puppet master behind the throne? It's really hard to know because Sumner Redstone has been held in seclusion.
Yes, absolutely. From what I saw, he actually hasn't made a public appearance, I think, since his birthday, his 92nd birthday party last year, and he actually
Yeah.
just turned 93 on Friday.
And I think it's worth talking about. So I read the transcript of his interview for this court case. And at times he needed to work through an interpreter. At times he was completely unaware. He used language that I would say was salty even by, construction site standards. He
Hmm.
was definitely not the in command media mogul we know. So just by reading the transcript, it's very clear that Sumner Redstone, while you can't make a judgment of whether he's aware of what's going on, he's clearly diminished. He's not the person he once was. So we don't know. Is he calling the shots? Is Sherry Redstone calling the shots? Should Dumont be replaced? The company has not done very well. And the big issue is Dumont and the board want to sell a stake in Paramount, and supposedly Redstone is against that, or Sumner Redstone is against that.
Yes, yes. He has generally been a big supporter of the idea of keeping all of Paramount ownership in house. And, it comes down to with Dowman and another director, George Abrams, being essentially removed from the trust for from 7 to 5 people. And essentially the idea that Sherry will probably fill those 2 spots if she does with people who, kind
Yeah,
of
she's
support what
actually
she
named
wants.
her daughter and another close confidant to those spots.
So there you go.
But that said, this is the Redstone Family Trust. Who would you expect to be named to it? I was hoping, but my name did not come up. So, once again, I think if I had to look at this as an analyst, I would say it's probably a little from column A, a little from column B. Of course, Sherry Redstone wants to make the decisions, but I think she's also at least trying to interpret what her father wants. How much of that he's stating and how much she's guessing or trying to infer, we don't know. But Damon obviously doesn't want to lose his job, so he's going to work hard to keep the board independent and try to fight any of this.
Absolutely. So, let's, I guess, look a little bit at the struggles that Viacom has actually faced. We know that filmed entertainment revenue has declined 50% since 2011, and that tracks pretty much a 5-year slide in total revenue for the company over that same period. And we know that a lot of this is coming from the fact that the main studio Paramount is struggling with these hits that when we spoke earlier, Dan, like that you had mentioned, Disney knows that its Star Wars or Marvel films will deliver at a certain level.
Right. Paramount has the problem that we've moved to a franchise-based movie world. If you're going to spend $200 million to make a film, it better do $1.2 billion, $1.5 billion. And you could say Transformers will do that. You can say that maybe Mission Impossible has another couple of movies left, but the other franchises they own, SpongeBob, it's generally not things that are surefire hits. A World War Z sequel, a Jack Reacher sequel. These are not things you can automatically say are going to do as well as a Marvel movie or even a Despicable Me sequel, to look at some things. So they are making 15 movies a year, and maybe 11, 12 of them are a guess, and that's not really where you want to be. When your slate says untitled Mark Wahlberg film, that doesn't give you the same confidence as when it says Thor 4.
Yes.
And then on the other side, on the cable side, they own some valuable properties, but I think we've seen how quickly they can slide. I mean, if you look at something like Comedy Central, just the transition from Jon Stewart to Trevor Noah has cost them, 35, 40% of their audience. And they'll say, oh, well, the kids watch it digitally, but you don't make as much money as when they actually watch it live on television. And in the changing cord cutting world, they own all these properties, but they don't own distribution. So, if people are moving to skinny bundles or streaming, are they really going to pay for VH1 Classic or MTV4 or whatever some of these lesser networks are? It puts Viacom in a really difficult position.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because one of these skinny bundles that you might call it, or these services with Sling TV, for example, I think specifically does not include a lot of these Viacom properties.
Viacom has largely been on the outside looking in, and I want to say Comedy Central is on there, but I might be wrong. Um, the challenge they have is they're not Comcast. They don't own the pipe and the channel. So, they could launch their own bundle, but we're at a time where MTV is not at the height of its powers. They don't have a Total Request Live or something that's capturing, the 13 to 15-year-olds where they're going to make their parents buy it. So if I'm sitting with my kids and I only have one kid, if I'm sitting with my kid and saying, hey, what channels do we want? I don't know that Spike or MTV or VH1 certainly, I don't know that even Comedy Central is going to come up.
Yes. And just to step back a little bit too, so you're looking as an investor at their media networks business, how they make money. So as the viewership drops, it's going to immediately start impacting a lot of their advertising revenue, because the fact of the matter is, the more viewers you have, the more you can charge.
I think it goes beyond advertising revenue and it goes into carriage fees.
Yes.
MTV and VH1 each have 3 or 4 spin-off channels. And while the carriage might only be a nickel a month times 94 million cable homes being forced to carry those is a lot of money when you have a channel that, doesn't have any programming costs. So, as you take that away, skinny bundles are not going to have these channels, or if they do, they're not going to pay for them. So when you take these stations that 60, 80,000 people are watching, there's no advertising revenue for that amount of people, or at least, not enough that matters. So I think you're going to see Viacom take some real hits, and they don't have a way to get those channels out to people. And other than Transformers, they don't have the movie properties to go make a deal with people that own distribution to say, hey, look, take our whole package, take MTV plus these 6 movie franchises. They don't have that.
Yeah. So right now, as far as I know, I believe a lot of those carriage fees get negotiated in longer, term contracts, might be a few years. But if these sustained headwinds are hitting their media networks business, and they're not able to, control that or command that same kind of viewership, the carriage fees are going to see the hits, not just in terms of what they're charging, but how many people, essentially, that base of viewers, are able to charge it on.
Yeah, I mean, it's a shrinking universe, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. I think the other thing to think about as an investor is Viacom and CBS have always made me nervous because they're 80% controlled by the Redstone family, by for many years Sumner Redstone, and maybe now Sumner Redstone. And as an individual investor, if he controls 80%, is he managing the company for me, or is he managing it for himself? And I know there's an independent board at both companies and theoretically independent CEOs, but it's hard to see how this is, a company that's looking to maximize shareholder value.
Yes. And even if you look at Philippe Dauman, who is currently the CEO of Viacom, he was previously seen as longtime protege to Sumner Redstone. And some of the reports I saw when he was still kind of estranged from his kids, he actually favored Dauman even more than both of them. So you can see.
That's what sort of makes this all sort of a Game of Thrones subplot.
Yes.
Because Shari Redstone didn't speak to her dad for a long time. Now, that's not uncommon in family businesses. I have plenty of relatives I haven't spoken to because of family businesses. But now now they've sort of put it back together, but does that mean he's willing to get rid of his longtime friend? Or, would he come up with some other solution? Maybe, minimize his power, or maybe just block the Paramount sale but not get rid of him. You really don't know who's making the decisions. I mean, look, Sumner Redstone might have moments of clarity and be making clear decisions, or Shari Redstone might just be doing what she thinks benefits her dad.
Yes, absolutely. So, taking a bigger picture look, I wanted to talk about Broadcasting and Cable. Recently, they reported on Nielsen's monthly estimates for cable TV subscriptions. Thank you for sharing those with me, Dan. And
No problem.
they pointed to the ongoing trend of what you had mentioned, cord shading, as cable TV households are expected to decline about 2.2% in June. What do you think? Longer term, is this just something else that Viacom is really going to have to be thinking about?
I think it's going to be a big problem. I mean, for years we worried about cord cutting. That was people completely getting rid of cable in favor of, streaming services, Hulu, Netflix, Amazon Prime, whatever it was. And that really hasn't happened. There were signs this year that those numbers maybe topped out in the fourth quarter and of 2015 and the first quarter of 2016. The industry actually made gains, small ones in the first quarter. But if you look at cord shaving, which is the idea of, okay, I have 200 channels and that's ridiculous. I only watch 25. Now, the challenge is if you, for 200 channels, maybe you pay $103 a month. I'm guessing at the number. But so your average cost per channel is about 50 cents. When you get down to 2025, you might pay a dollar or two, but you might still pay a lower price overall and get everything you want. I think we're going to see more of that. And when that happens, we end sort of TV socialism. Right now, if I love the History Channel, I don't, but let's pretend I did, you might be subsidizing that by paying for it in carriage fees. The second you give you the option to get rid of it, well, you're not going to pay for the Tennis Channel, the History Channel, I don't know, Discovery ID or whatever these stations are. And all of a sudden, a channel might have 2 or 300,000 users, and either those people are going to have to pay $20 a month or they're not going to get the channel. And maybe there's a few things like the Tennis Channel that could exist just as a subscription model, but I'm not going to pay for the cooking network just because I watch it sometimes if it all of a sudden costs $15 a month.
So do you see this, Dan, as kind of like a shift in power, essentially, now that these companies like Viacom are unable to get these carriage fees among this massive base of viewers and earn lots of revenue that way, and they're kind of losing that leverage they have in negotiations, essentially?
I use this word lightly. It's sort of in a joking manner, but I think it's the end of a scam. The reality is, should I have to pay for 17 Disney channels that I don't watch? Of course not. Now, if you could find ways with packages to make me want to subsidize what you like, I think we'll see some of that. Where, everyone or almost everyone is still probably going to pay for ESPN, on any of the skinny bundles, which is the most expensive of all the channels. But this was never a logical system. Why? I don't force you when you go to the movies to go see, X-Men Apocalypse to buy tickets to The Nice Guys in case someone else wants to see that. That's just not how it works. So I think we're going to see television have to stand on its own merits. And, on one hand, that's bad. On the other hand, on Netflix, something like The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, which does about 4 million viewers, is considered a hit. Whereas on NBC, that would be a huge flop. So, you really have a changing world where if you create content and it stands on its own and it finds an audience, it'll work. But the public isn't necessarily going to pay for content that almost nobody is watching.
Yeah. Okay. So any other thoughts that you wanted to leave our listeners off with about Viacom or the industry overall? I think the point that you touched on that I think is most important when you're investing in a company like this is that what you mentioned with the fact that National Amusements, the company that Sumner Redstone's father founded, which still operates, or was originally a movie theater company, still operates theaters, but is now mainly the investment vehicle for the control of Viacom and CBS. The fact that it has this 80% controlling voting share of these two massive companies, these individual shareholders, I feel like their voices can get lost. But anything else you want to leave off with?
Yeah, I mean, I think as you look at this now, it's all very exciting. Oh, the board is suing, and will Damon be replaced? And there's a lot of Shakespearean intrigue here. But if you really step back, the reality is Sherry Redstone is going to end up controlling this. It's a question of whether she controls it before her father dies, after her father dies, or maybe it'll take a few years. But she'll end up controlling this trust, and independent people and outsiders are not going to be able to sort of get in the way of a family-dominated Sumner Redstone hand-picked board of trustees. So no matter what you call her, if you're looking at CBS and Viacom, you have to realize she's the big boss at the end of it. And, that's not fair to Les Moonves or Philippe Damon or whoever takes their jobs next, but she is big brother when it comes to all of this. So if you're going to invest in these companies, I think you have to look at her track record.
Oh, that's a great point. Great point. So otherwise, that's all from Dan and me today. You can always reach out to us via Twitter at MF Industry Focus or shoot us an email with any questions or comments to industryfocus@fool.com. You can also discover other podcasts from Motley Fool by checking out www.fool.com/podcast. And as always, people in the program may own companies discussed on the show, and the Motley Fool may have formal recommendations for or against those stocks mentioned. So don't buy or sell anything based solely on what you hear during the program. For Dan Klein, this is Vincent Chen. Thank you for listening, and Fool on.